Okay, take two. First time I spouted, I spent probably 15 minutes spouting on without any recording going on. So this time, yeah, we're going. Okay. So way earlier, I was thinking about what I could spout on about and avoid making it a really sad one. So I'm not quite done with it. I'm almost done with it. I'm kind of on the last chapter or bit or whatever of the fourth turning. But basically, like I've mentioned before, I've brought it up. It explains the idea that history kind of runs in cycles. And so you've got various different phases of that cycle that happen. And there's another cycle known as the Yuga cycle. It's kind of gone more into depth by the Asian capitalists. That channel's since been renamed to a dormant dynasty. But they talk about that a little bit, and it's referenced a little bit later on in successive videos after that. But one thing that you see in kind of both cycles is you've got the spiritual awareness portion of it, where everyone's basically awakening to this new idea or the spiritual nature of their being. So you see in the fourth turning, they call that the awakening. In the Kali Yuga cycle, they I can't remember what they called the phase, but it's more known for having built up a priestly caste of people to spiritually guide the people. And then you've also got the more carnal, temporal, physical, whatever, extreme on the other side, which the fourth turning calls an unraveling, where you pull down the spiritual structures and what all the structures built from the vision of those that generation that had control during that time period. And they basically kind of live off of their more basic natural desires per se. And they're a much more carnal people. But you see that as they go through these cycles, that you can either build up something or tear it down. It's kind of the old adage, those who do not learn from history are doomed to repeat it. It's kind of really that, if you don't learn from the previous cycle, what made it worse, then how are you supposed to make the next cycle easier to bear or better to go through? So you're kind of running through this cycle of either you're slowly degenerating further and further, or you can learn from the last degeneration where it's okay, we've gone through this crisis and it was worse than the last one. What did we do different? What can we learn that will help us in the next time? Because you can't always avert that cycle. In my own individual life, I've noticed kind of this cycle paradigm where I have a good time where everything's good, and where there's some sort of crisis or whatever that happens that tears everything down and I have to rebuild back up. And on an individual basis, those cycles end up being tighter than the societal cycles. So rather than going through a cycle taking a whole lifespan, It may be tighter within a year, a few years. It kind of depends. Some cycles can be longer than others. But the important thing is, what do we learn in each of those cycles so that we can make the next one better? So one thing that you find is whether you're in one of the high phases of your cycle or in the crisis phase of your cycle, you've got an event that happens. And a lot of people go, well, I don't have control over anything. And so you may feel like you don't have control, but you can determine your response. And so when you get an event and you respond to it, then that'll change your outcome. So you get event plus response equals outcome. So the outcome that you get in the end can be controlled by you. You can't always control what events happen in your life, but you can always control your response. And that'll change your outcome. And so as you go into the next portion of the cycle, or go into the next cycle of that, into that next turning point, you can either decide whether that turning point is going to be something that takes you forward or will take you backward. So you can either progress or you can degenerate. It all depends on your response. And so some people, it's like, well, I just can't help it. It's this, this, and this. It's like, well, you can determine your response. You are the master, the programmer of your life in the end. When you start to take control of your life, you start to find out, hey, maybe I do have a little bit more control. Maybe I can make the next time I go through this crisis a little bit easier. I mean, you can't always choose every event or crisis that happens. You can't always decide when a pet's going to die or when a loved one's going to die. You can't always decide when you're going to hit a financial hard time, but you can determine how you respond to that, whether it be emotionally, whether it be through your actions thereafter. You can choose your response. Are you going to get up and push forward in spite of every excuse and reason that other people would give you that you could be able to just let it go for a few days? Do you get up in the morning and get out the door, even if it is a little bit later than usual, but do you still fight with yourself and get yourself out of bed, up in the morning, so that you can go on and work or do what you need to do? Do you fight with yourself and get yourself out doing what needs to get done so that you can progress, rather than wallowing in the mire and saying, woe is me? Because you can always still go and work and still say, woe is me, while you work. But sometimes that work can help you solve the problems that you're going through. But even if that doesn't help you solve it directly, it does show that you mean to not let anything get in your way. Because there are a lot of people now that it's like, well, everything's just in my way and I can't do it. It's like, the only thing that's in your way is you. You're responding to this stimuli, to this event, in a way to where you're holding yourself back. I mean, yeah, sometimes because it's so close to the event, you forget some things, but are you at least doing small things that will help you to move forward? Even if you're not doing everything, maybe you're doing some things still. Maybe you're still keeping some routine that keeps you stable and helps you to move forward, to learn and progress, so that as you pick yourself back up, as you pick up all the pieces and put them back together, that you weren't just degenerating the whole time. Because that will make the difference the next time that you hit another event that's tragic or another crisis. And that will also launch you into the next high period to where you're going to feel good. Because it's going to suck for a little bit, but it's going to get better. There's always going to be another better spot. You just have to be able to see it. You can sit there and be stuck in a crisis mood for as long as you want. Or you can kind of try and pick yourself out and crawl out of the mud and then get back on your feet and move forward and make the next one better. And then you learn from that crisis or other previous ones. You look back, you learn from your history, and then you figure out how to prepare yourself emotionally, mentally, and everything else for the next one. Hello? Yeah, this is
Dr. Bevan at Rants. Good afternoon.
Hey, yeah, we had to put him down because he had basically gone throughout the day.
When was it?
It was Monday when I had called in. We'd done it Monday night because he had basically hit the point to where he was peeing straight blood.
Was he really?
Yeah.
Did you see? Okay. Well. Okay. Well, and I'm sorry. That's terrible. What you didn't have him put down here?
No, we didn't have it in the budget to bring him in.
So did you put him in yourself?
Yeah, we had to do it ourselves.
I'm sorry. Well, I apologize. I wish there was something we could do for you.
Okay, well, thank you.
Yeah. Have a good day.
Yep, bye. Anyway, and like I said, it just helps make the next one a bit easier to deal with. And so maybe as you go, yeah, just kind of take time to learn from that. Those cycles in your own life will be tighter than society's because it takes a lifespan to go through one of a societal generational cycle. But as we as a society also learn to deal with it, then we can learn from our own history what to avoid, whether it be our own individual selves that we need to avoid, that we learn from our society's history, or whether it be what we teach ourselves, that we teach one another on how to do it. We can even learn from other societies and other cultures what they did and figure out how to apply those principles so that we don't end up repeating that same thing. We can look back in history and society, and we can look at how some people perpetuate a cycle. Like, you look at the parent-to-child paradigm, where you get a parent treats their child a certain way, that child grows up, becomes a parent, and if they aren't careful, if they aren't aware of it, they end up repeating what the treatment that they may not have liked from their parent to their own child. And if someone doesn't end up learning from that and avoiding repeating the cycle, then it just goes down and down through the generations. You can even see this in societal history, where with black persecution, you had black people were marginalized for a bit. And then as things went on, blacks finally got more freedom. And now you look at where we're at, and blacks are trying to be the ones to oppress someone else. Not all of them, but some of them. But that's that perpetual cycle of human nature where you build from one to the next, and so you learn a behavior from someone that was in charge of you, and then you perpetuate that behavior onto someone else. You can even look at like the Mormon pioneers, persecuted, kicked out of their homes, killed in many ways. They come out, they find peace for a little bit, and I would say to some extent that angst that they felt from previously being kicked out of their home and everything is what contributed to the outcome in the Mountain Meadows Massacre. The fact that maybe they were afraid of that, and that some of them wanted to get back, or whatever reason, at the people that had done it to them, even though those people weren't directly involved with it. They were kind of in a... It's that tight cycle where you can find the small cycles and the larger cycles, where it's like, well, you perpetuated, we experienced this, and then without realizing it or thinking about it, we fell into that same trap where we basically became the people that we were fighting, we thought we were fighting against. We became the people that marginalized us. We became the people and used their methods that we said we were fighting. You look at Antifa and it's like, well, they're anti-fascist, but it's like, but they're using all those same fascist techniques to get their way. They've become the fascists now. Well, Antifa, it's all in the name. They're doing it because of this. It's like, there's a right way to do things, and they're not doing it right. They have not learned from the cycle, or they've been indoctrinated to perpetuate the cycle and to bring us to and degenerate society in such a way that it becomes less free. Like I said, if we don't learn from history, we're doomed to repeat it. So as we go through our own individual lives, that's where we start, is we start to look at our own lives. We learn from those perpetual cycles, and then we learn to improve ourselves. We gain more influence with ourselves, and then that influence some people notice, and then we gain influence with those people that notice, and our influence grows to a greater sphere of people, and it grows and grows until we start to create our own tribe, which we have influence with, and which those people go and influence other people just through their example. And that's how society changes, not through violence. It's by changing ourselves, learning how to take advantage of those cycles, and to progress and use them to grow rather than to wallow in the mire. And then we help other people learn to do the same.